Now that you know really well how to find the equation of a graph, we're going to talk about how to find the equation from a table. And we're still just continuing to talk about slope-intercept form, which don't forget is y equals mx plus b. So there are three different things that we need to do in order to be able to find the equation when we don't have a graph. Okay, so first of all, we know that m is another way of saying the slope. So the first thing is that we're going to have to find the slope, and then we're going to have to figure out which direction that slope is going in. So you're either going to make it a positive or a negative once you figure out what that slope is. Then we're going to identify b, or the y-intercept. And then finally, we've discussed this briefly. Remember that the y-intercept is wherever the graph crosses the y-axis. Well, in order for the graph to cross the y-axis, that means that on the first one that I have here, we've got a table. Remember that step one is to find the slope. So I'm going to do that by finding my rate of change. Of course, my change in y over my change in x. You've done this 1,000 times. So my change in y from 5 to 7 is an increase of 2. My change in x from 0 to 1 is an increase in 1. So 2 over 1 simplifies to a 2 for the slope. Now the y-intercept, remember step 2, the y-intercept, I just explained that the y-intercept is whatever y is when x equals 0. But I'm going to give you another visual by kind of just estimating what this table looks like when you graph it. So that first ordered pair that I have right there, that is 0, 5. Okay, so it wouldn't be over left or right, but it would go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. My other point, 1, 7, would be over to the right 1, and then up 7, so over 1, and then up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like up there somewhere. And then 2, 9 would be over 2, and then up 9. You can kind of see it's going to go sort of in this direction. Well, where does it cross the y-axis? It crosses right there at the 5. So the y-intercept, again, it's whatever y equals when x equals 0. So the y-intercept, step 2, is 5, because this little graph is going to cross the y-axis at 5. So step 3 is just to make the equation. So y equals mx plus b. I'm going to substitute that slope of 2 in for the slope. So it's 2x. I'm going to substitute that 5 in for b. So my equation is y equals 2x plus 5. I want you to take a second to pause this video and go ahead and try to do exactly what I just did with number 2. Then come back and restart the video and see whether or not you did it correctly. All right, so, oops, I just realized that I went to number 3. Sorry about that. Okay, let's go back to number 2. So step 1, of course, is to find my slope. So we've got to find our rate of change. So from negative 3 to negative 6, that is a decrease of 3. So our change in y is negative 3. And from negative 6 to negative 3, remember that that is actually an increase in 3. It's actually going up by 3. So negative 3 over a positive 3 simplifies to a negative 1. So our slope is negative 1. And then our y-intercept, if I were to graph this point right here, I can't move it left or right because x is 0, but it does go down 9. So that point right there, the graph would actually cross at negative 9. So my y-intercept is a negative 9. So if I put all of that together, y equals mx plus b. So my slope is a negative 1. My y-intercept is a negative 9, so I'm going to say minus 9. And then we haven't really talked about this yet, but in math, we like to keep things as simple as possible. So that negative 1 that we have right there in front of the x for our slope really doesn't have to be there. Remember from combining like terms that if there's no number in front of the x, we assume it's a 1. So we're going to make this equation a little bit more simple. It's actually going to be y equals negative x minus 9. Go ahead and pause the video, try number 3 on your own, and then restart the video when you're ready. All right, here we go. So step one, of course, is that we need to determine whatever our slope is. So our change in y from 1 to 2 is 1. Our change in x from -2 up to 0, that is a positive 2. So our slope is a positive 1/2. Our y-intercept, step 2, if we were going to graph this sucker, it wouldn't be over left or right, but it would go up 2. So our y-intercept is, of course, a 2. So if we're putting it into slope-intercept form, I'm going to replace the m with that 1/2. I'm going to replace my b with my y-intercept of 2. I got y equals 1/2 x plus 2. Hopefully you were able to do number 5, or I'm sorry, you're able to do number 4, but you might have gotten a little bit stuck here on number 5. So let me help you out. And the reason you might have gotten stuck, well, first of all, let's go ahead and do the first step that we know how to do. Okay, because we know that our first step is that we simply need to find the slope. So I'm going to find my change in y over my change in x. So 12 over 9, or 12 to 9 is going down by 3, and from 1 to 2 is going up by 1. So our slope is -3 over 1, which is a -3. Now step 2, finding our y-intercept might be a little bit more difficult here because we don't have a 0 in our x column, so it's kind of hard to figure out what your y is going to be. Now this is where you can use your rate of change to help you out, especially in this example. Because I noticed the pattern right here, that because my x's are increasing by 1 all the way down, that means that if I were to go kind of in, because they're going up by 1 every time, if I go backwards and I go subtract 1, then my next number right here is going to be a 0. See how now I just add that 0 at the top and I'm going 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I know, so if I put a 0 there for the x, I can look at the pattern for the y's, and I notice that here they're going up every time by 3, 6, 9, and now 12. So that means that my next number up, if I'm adding 3, is going to be 15. So 0, 15 will be my y-intercept. So my y-intercept is 15, which means my equation will be y equals -3x plus 15. Try to use that same idea that I just gave you to do number 6. And I will get back to you in 1 second. Hopefully you've had a second to take a look at it. So, of course, step 1 is slope. So this is going down by 4 every time. So if I, and then my change in x is going up by 4. So -4 over +4 gives me a -1. Now I need to think about what my y-intercept is. And I'm going to, again, kind of do that working backwards thing that I just did a minute ago. So here, this is going up. So +4, +4, +4. While this one is going up, -4, -4. So if I subtract by 4 every time going back up, 0 will be next. And then if I'm adding 4, that means that my y-intercept is going to be 18. So I've got y equals -x I also want to show you one more method that you can use because there's not always going to be a pattern there in your table. Now, there really kind of is for these last few, but just in case you get to one that's not a pattern, I want to make sure you know what to do. Okay, so of course, we're going to find our slope. This is going up by 1. This is going up by 1. 1 over 1 is, of course, just a 1. Now here's a different way to find the y-intercept, and it's using the slope-intercept form of the equation. So y equals mx plus b. So we know that the slope is 1. So I'm going to put 1 right there in my equation for my slope. And I am going to take this set of points right here from the table, and I am going to take the negative 4 out of the x column and substitute it in there for x. So instead of 1 times x, now it's going to be 1 times a negative 4. And I'm going to take the 2 out of the y column and put it in for 2. So now it's equal to 2. So now I've got the equation 2 is equal to 1 times negative 4 plus b, and I can actually use this to solve for b. So 1 times negative 4 is, of course, negative 4. So this leaves me with the equation 2 equals negative 4 plus b. To solve for b, I'm just going to add 4 to both sides. So I know that b is going to be equal to 6. So now I know that my y-intercept is a 6. So my equation is y equals 1x plus 6. Go ahead and try that method on your own for number 8. Pause the video and I'll get right back to you just so you can check it. Alrighty, last but not least for number 8, my first step is, of course, to find my slope. This is increasing by 10. This is decreasing by 5. So 10 over negative 5 means that I'm going to have a negative 2 for my slope. And I'm going to pretend for a minute that there's not a pattern going on in this table. I'm just going to use the format y equals mx plus b. Okay, so I know that my slope, or my m, is negative 2. So I'm going to substitute the negative 2 in for m. And then I'm going to take the x from this table, which is negative 5, and put it in for x. So instead of negative 2 times x, I'm going to do negative 2 times negative 5, which I know is a 10. So 10 plus whatever b happens to be is going to be equal to, I'm going to take this 10 for the y and put it in for y. Okay, so now I've got an equation to solve. To cancel out that 10 that's over there with the b, I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides, which means that 0 is equal to b. So b is 0. So my equation is y equals negative 2x plus 0. But whenever we have a y-intercept of 0, we don't bother to write it. So we're just going to leave this as y equals negative 2x.